Hey, what's up, Unfamiliar? What's up, Max? Yeah, so my journey was kind of interesting. So after I was laid off, I had a ton of time and money. And so I started to participate in the stock market, part of Wall Street Bets in that rally that it had. Once the wheels kind of fell off that, then, crypto, in particular, Web3 gaming, was just making a ton of noise. I'm a huge gamer at heart. And so I created a YouTube channel called No Autopilot, where I acted as like a poor man's venture capitalist, doing like hour-long live streams into tokenomics and founder track record and protocols and all these things. I did that for about 8 months, was then hired into Web3 on a team based out of San Francisco that was building like a Web3 version of Roblox, and did marketing, community partnerships for them, a handful of other games. Trying to think what else is pertinent to know. I've done so much. After that, then me and my co-founder, we attempted to launch a layer 3 blockchain specific to gaming early last year. It was super painful as first-time founders. We were not successful. And so once that kind of failed, I looked around and I wished that a community existed that I could lean on to get guidance. I think pockets of it existed in like Fog DAO, Game 7, the Blockchain Game Alliance, but not really, I think, as active as what I would like. So then I started the Gaming Startup Collective in November, and it's just a private community of builders who try and help each other pretty much in the Web3 gaming space.
Awesome story. I guess we can catch up also like afterwards to not keep people here, but I don't know if we should get things started or if we should wait a little bit more.
No, let's kick it off. So welcome everyone. We are joined today by Simon from Alliance DAO. If you don't know Alliance DAO, you're going to be very happy that you're here. I've been following them for years. Huge fan of their work. Simon, for the folks who don't know, maybe can you give a quick introduction to yourself, and then what is Alliance DAO?
So myself, I am a former founder as well. Started a company focused in the Latin American market back in 2018. Went through YC back in the day. And then after a few years of kind of like fighting against regulators in Latin America, I decided to give up. And luckily, we had most of our revenues in Bitcoin, so we had redistributed most of the money back to investors. And one of our investors is actually Imran Khan, who is the founder of Alliance. And once I decided to shut down the company, he invited me to join to lead the growth team. And that's very briefly kind of my story in the past, maybe like 7 years. And Alliance is essentially an accelerator, but we're also, more importantly, a founder community where founders are going to have the chance to essentially vote. We're going to launch a DAO this year. Actually, there's going to be some incentive mechanisms. So you can think about Alliance in a way as like the Y Combinator of crypto, but that rewards founders that are part of the community for doing any action that adds value to the community. And we think that's a big deal, obviously, because the fund carry, so all of the investments that the fund makes in new startups, in new founders that join the community, carry, which is the what we make, let's say the revenue of the company, it's actually going to be transferred. A large percentage of it is going to be transferred to the DAO's treasury. And that's going to be money that's going to be redistributed to founders in many ways. So hopefully that's kind of like a virtuous cycle that we're going to be kind of working on. It's just going to be more sustainable. It's going to align incentives and so on. So yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Alliance is kind of like the accelerator, the fund, and the DAO. Those are kind of like the three verticals that I would say comprise Alliance. And I'm also happy to open it up for questions before I dive in, because today, kind of like the main objective of the call is to help you guys. If you guys have crypto gaming startups that you want to apply to Alliance with, or actually apply to any other accelerator or fund, I think a lot of the advice I'm going to give you guys today is going to be applicable across the board. So, happy to dive into that right away, or open the floor for questions about Alliance before I jump into it.
So many pieces to talk on right there. So folks, you know how this goes. This is a community call. So if you want to come up to the stage and talk, feel free. If you have questions you want to type, I'm happy to MC and read those, and we'll get those answered. Okay, cool. So maybe I could set a little bit of baseline information. So community about 300 builders, 80% are bootstrapped. We've seen teams getting further and further into their development cycle while staying bootstrapped. I would say likely every single team in here is looking for capital, either through grants, angels, accelerators, incubators, VCs, and then they're also trying to solve like the user acquisition element of getting people into their product. Can you share maybe how Alliance DAO supports projects if they are in fact accepted to Alliance DAO?
So I think one of the premises that we have here at Alliance is that we are very hands-on as mentors. And obviously, all of the mentors are former founders or have been in the space for a long time, involved in many ways. So, a lot of us have been there, done that, and we just basically roll up our sleeves and work with the founders. So in order for us to do that effectively, we've set up a cap on how many teams we can accept per cohort, because the only way this scales is by adding more mentors, and finding good mentors is really hard because a lot of the times these mentors are either rich and they don't want to work anymore, or, their incentive isn't there really. So finding former founders that have been there, done that, or researchers, people that are deep in the space and that also want to, roll up their sleeves and mentor a bunch of founders is hard. So because that doesn't scale, we just basically work with 20 founders per cohort in average, and we have only 2 cohorts per year. That means that we have maybe like 2 startups per mentor or something like that, which is very manageable. In any case, all the mentors are aware of all the other startups and are helping them in their areas of expertise. So in my case, for example, I have experience in payments, remittances, emerging markets, specifically Latin America, and consumer businesses. I would say those are kind of like my areas of like deep expertise. And then I focus on growth. But we have mentors that are more specialized on infrastructure. We have mentors actually specialized on gaming and tokenomics and so on. So we have like a specialized mentorship, and then we are very hands-on. And we've seen that to be our magic sauce. There's really nothing more to it. Founders really have expressed gratitude over the years about the work we do, just because we care a lot. And we don't have, the big, maybe Alliance is becoming a big brand now, but we don't have that, I guess, chip on our backs that are like we're, whatever big brand name, and then we can just like chill out. So that really, I think that really sets us apart. And the acceleration program is 12 weeks. It's 4 weeks in person in New York. We actually just opened our offices in New York, and then 8 weeks remote. But founders who want to stay working out of New York can do so. The offices are open to all the alumni and all the founders during the cohort. But specifically the first 4 weeks, what's cool about it is that most of the mentors are going to be there. We're going to bring other speakers, other founders of big protocols, like the founders of Solana, the founders of Filecoin, the founders of EigenLayer, et cetera, and we're going to bring them to talk to you guys. It's, it basically helps founders connect with like deeper crypto people. And then finally, we're going to do the demo day in person as well, because in New York, there's actually a large quantity of VC funds that have their offices there. And obviously, having a VC meeting in person compared to online, it dramatically changes the outcome. So we decided to have the offices in New York and do as many things as possible there. But we want to keep it also, we want to stay true to how we started, which is being fully remote for those founders who are in emerging economies, be in the location where they are, and just be kind of remote friendly. And that's a little bit about the programming as well. And I think lastly, one thing I want to mention is actually a couple of things. The first thing is that a lot of the work that we do is actually very trivial, is, keeping founders focused, helping them avoid, the shiny objects in the way, helping them prioritize, because of the sheer fact, like the simple fact that we've mentored so many founders and that we've seen so many things and that we read so many applications. We just have like a general kind of view of what's happening in the industry at large, and we've seen mistakes over and over. So we just have like a compass for helping founders focus on the right things. And it's very simple, to do. But for founders who are in the weeds, in the trenches, dealing with fires every day, it really helps them stay focused. So a lot of our work is just basic, is what I want to say, is keeping the founders focused and actually also keeping them accountable, like week over week. What's your goal? What are you going to do? How are you doing with that? And then preparing founders for demo day, which is at the end of the program, which is when most founders typically raise large amounts of money. And then we also help founders in the narrative that they want to, use in demo day, because the narrative is actually like maybe like 50% of the race. Like me personally, I've been very impressed over the years, and since I've become more experienced, to see how much weight there is to narrative when you're fundraising compared to like actual kind of growth metrics. It's really insane. So we have a couple of folks in the team who are actually really, really good with building kind of narratives when you're racing. So that's another thing that we do very hands-on. Like we prepare, I think we've actually done the pitches for many companies. We're just like, no worries, like you're not good at this, we'll help you with the pitch. It's obviously not the ideal case.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I'll tell you today is like, as founders, you need to be kind of obviously curious people. You need to be very agile to just adapt to, constant changes and quickly. But I think the most important thing is that you need to be selling all the time. So learning how to sell is really important. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. Like that's kind of like our main work. And then this last thing is that you have a community of other founders who are in different stages, actually. Some of them are already kind of successful companies and they're angel investing in new founders, or actually giving some of their time to do mentorship and advising. Some of them are busy and are like in the middle of the growth stage, but they can still provide really good information and really good contacts or intros. I think we've been doing this for a little bit over 4 years. We're starting to see the flywheels turn, where we have enough founders in the community and enough successful founders and enough new founders to see all of these things start to work, connections start to happen, founders helping each other. And we build an internal platform where founders can actually do specific things. If you guys remember at the beginning of the call, I mentioned we're going to become a DAO. So founders are going to be able to vote through that community platform. Founders are going to be able to do many things that are going to get rewarded, such as, for example, we have an investor review feature where if you raise money or not from an investor, you can leave a review. That is public data only for the alumni. So whenever you're going to be raising from Latin Paradigm, you can see what the experience has been for other Alliance founders with specific partners from those funds. All of the funds are rated, and that's just one feature out of maybe, I don't know, more than 10 that we have, and we continue to build. So yeah, I think that's another thing that we are not necessarily doing ourselves as mentor. It's part of just being part of the community.
Man, I love that so much. Have you seen that meme of the guy rattling the gates and he's like, "Let me in"? I don't know if someone has that meme, drop it. That's what I feel, dude. Like honestly, like the founders that have went through Alliance, the things that they've seen, the story-changing moments in Web3 that they've been able to influence. Just that knowledge is so dang valuable and interesting.
Yeah. And obviously, we're also aware that we don't really like the word elite, but it's an elitesque community because it's so hard to get in, just because we cannot scale mentorship and we just have to do it like that. And there's a growing number of founders in the space, and so we get more applications and so on. We're aware of this, and we're trying to do things to democratize the information that we know. And so in a way, we're kind of following a similar kind of track that YC followed, right? Like YC has like a public thing called the YC Startup School. They have a bunch of content. We're thinking about like what is a Web3 native of doing these things already. So for example, and we're doing very small stuff right now. We launched a podcast called the Good Game Podcast. Through that, we're hoping to bring in a new type of podcast to the crypto community where we're more focused on sharing information that is applicable to founders, not just technical, because, in crypto, there's a bunch of other podcasts already where There are many technical podcasts. There are many podcasts that are focused on like the new shiny thing that's happening in the industry every week. There was a lot of information out there, but there wasn't really a podcast that we thought that was focused really on founder advice, things that founders can use. So that's a little bit of what we're aiming to do. Good Game. We're also starting to do similar content in our YouTube channel. I personally released a newsletter where I'm basically searching on YouTube all of the different podcasts out there and trying to find really bite-sized content on founder advice from crypto founders. So we recently launched this newsletter. It should be able to be read in 1 to 3 minutes. And again, like thinking about founders who don't have time. And this is just the beginning of it. But over time, we are going to try to make more of this public. There's a few nuances there. For example, like we've seen that the lectures, when we bring speakers to talk to our cohort, if we do this off the record, the quality of the lecture is 10x. So that there are some points of tension in there where if we record something for, sharing it to the public, then the quality is not that good. So we'll have to figure some things out. Ultimately, that's the goal.
Okay, selfish plug here. Have you happened to come across the Token Takeover podcast in your travels?
No.
Okay.
Token Takeover podcast.
Yeah, so it's my podcast. It's so like kind of how we're chatting today. Oftentimes we record just the audio elements of this conversation with VCs, angels, protocols, Web3 marketing folks, whatever. Yeah, maybe take a look. I'd be curious to hear your honest opinion, actually, because, again, I think you guys have an eye for bullshit and an eye for what's actually quality advice.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I actually have to find more content for the newsletter related to like gaming, so would love to check it out. If you can send it to me over Telegram, that would be amazing. Just to make sure it's the right one. But I also wanted to kind of dive like right into the meat here for founders. This is also not the first time I've done this. I've done this type of call with other communities in the past, and it's very biased, right? Like this is my personal opinion. This is not Alliance's opinion, but I compiled a list of tips and ways to think about how to increase your chances of getting accepted into an acceleration program, any acceleration program, or even, if applicable, even to like how to like talk to investors in general, right? And a lot of the things that I'm going to share today are actually things that I did back when I applied to YC, because I think it's not new for anyone here that getting accepted into a community, into a close-knit community that is hard to get into, let's say Stanford, Harvard, those type of things, like boomer, I would say those are kind of like the boomer communities. It really is helpful, right? Like back in 2017, when I started to hack with my co-founders, we were living in Latin America. We didn't have any connections in Silicon Valley. We didn't have any connections in crypto. So we had to be very strategic about like how to get into YC. And we luckily applied and we got in the first time. And I think there's a large part that is attributed to luck. Obviously, luck plays a big role in life, but a large part of it, I think, was also preparation. I'm going to share basically how I prepared for these things. I see that there's actually there's a chat here. I just checked it out.
You're okay to keep on your current thought, and then I'm keeping track of the questions too, so I'll make sure we have maybe 15 minutes at the end to hit every last one.
Okay, so let's dive into it. So the first thing I would say is going back to what I mentioned, that one of the skills of the founders is to sell all the time. So treating this as a sales process is really important. I think, the same way that when you're kind of interviewing to work for a company, how you sell yourself, how you present yourself, like taking your time. But when you apply this sales mentality to applying for an accelerator, there's a few things that I found that you can do that are really cool. So the first thing that I did is basically doing the research of who are the alumni that have gone to the program, and then try to make a list of the alumni that are more relevant to your company, your industry, or even your market. So in our case, back in the day, we were doing crypto. for Latin American consumer businesses. Like it was a consumer business in Latin America, just crypto. So I went on the YC kind of website. I went on LinkedIn and I scraped the contacts of a bunch, at least 50 founders that were Latin American or that were in crypto. Funny enough, I think, Brian Armstrong was in that list, and we exchanged a few emails back in the day. And the other one was like consumer businesses. I just made like a random. And then after I wrote my first version of the application, which actually I wrote it after, this is only for optimization. If you guys don't have the time, don't do this. But personally, I read all the Paul Graham essays. I went on YouTube, on the Y Combinator YouTube, and watch all the videos. So I, in a way, wrote my application with all of the advice that they already have given me and in the tone and voice that they already had, right? Like I tried the way they spoke. I tried to just follow the guidelines in general. And then once I had a version that I was happy with, I sent a cold email to all of these founders saying like, hey, like I've been working in startups for a while. I'm about to become a founder. I'm applying to YC. Here's my application. And I think I gave them a blurb, but the email was very short and I linked them directly with comment access to my application. And out of the 50 people, I think only 10 or something, 10 to 15 people replied to me like, hey, congrats, whatever. I don't have time. Wish you the best. This is my main tip is this one. Maybe they didn't give me comments directly on the application, but they gave me like a main tip. Or maybe they told me like, hey, I'm really interested in this for my personal use. I don't remember specifically all the conversations, but I do know a few of them replied. And out of the people who replied, I think maybe 3 or 4 gave me feedback directly on the application. And these were people who already have been to the program, who knew the partners, who knew how to get in. And this was invaluable feedback, right? Like after they gave me feedback, I think 2 of them, I know actually 2 of them that I remember vividly gave me feedback multiple times on multiple versions. And I probably did around 50 versions of my application before I submitted it, meaning that it changed. Even the questions that YC was asking me helped me understand what I was building better, what I was not doing. Have I spoken enough to my customers? Do I actually have the insights to craft a solid application to show YC that I know what I'm talking about? And so it really brought up all these existential questions for once, and then it also helped me understand how to sell myself much better. And also English is not my first language, and there was no ChatGPT back in the day, so that's also some consideration. But that's something that I think really, really helped. That would be my first sales tip. Second sales tip that I have for people here is, when you're selling, you kind of have to know who you're selling to. And in our case, we're selling to an accelerator. You have to assume a mentor is going to be reading hundreds of applications, if not thousands. So if you put yourself in the shoes of who is reading your application, you can learn a few things, including the fact that they're probably human. They're going to get tired after reading many applications, probably most applications being very similar to each other. So taking that into consideration, one of the things that you can do is figuring out ways to make your application stand out visually, not just the content, but visually. And again, I would say don't try this at home, but I did it and I don't know if it worked, but every single question that they asked me, I replied in one sentence. So if they told me do you have revenue? I would say yes. I wouldn't even say yes, I have this amount of revenue, because they didn't even ask me how much revenue I was making. They just asked me if I have revenue. So I would be extremely direct, actually, what they're asking me. So that's the first thing. In other types of questions where they ask you more than one question in the same questions, which they do, what I would do is reply in one sentence in caps, in big letters, and then actually extend myself in a paragraph or maybe 2 paragraphs, short paragraphs below. And so if somebody's skimming through my application, they can just very quickly get a grasp of what I'm building and the answers to their questions. So this is just a little trick that I did. And again, I don't know if it works, but it's just an example of the things that you can do when you're selling yourself and you're thinking about who you're selling to, like your customer persona, in this case, an interviewer or a mentor at an acceleration program or an investment fund. And so that's another kind of piece of advice. I do remember that you have to submit a video for Y Combinator as well, with founders. And so we're like, okay, how do we stand out? And so a lot of our customers, delivery people in Latin America, the people who deliver like the Uber Eats or the DoorDash or, this type of food delivery apps. And these were Venezuelan migrants who were sending remittances back to Venezuela from other Latin American countries. And so I went on the streets, I went to a park, and there were a bunch of them sitting in the park with their bags, waiting for food deliveries to come to them. And I asked them, like, hey, have you tried Value, which is our application? And a few of them actually had tried it. So I paid them like $5 to be in the video with me. And I told them, like, you want to be in the video? So I just filmed myself walking with my customers on the park saying, like, hey, I'm Simon, founder of Value. And they're like, yeah, this is me. I'm the customer. It's amazing. And I don't know, I think I added some background, like, music on it. I was just like trying to make sure that like they saw my video. And so I think it's just another example that I wanted to share on like how to stand out. And again, this is basically what I did, but you don't have to do these things. I think I did this because YC's scale is so large. I think, they get like 20,000 applications every cohort, something like ridiculous.
Wow.
So with those numbers, you have to make everything you can to stand out. Another exercise that I did, talking about writing multiple versions of your application, is I said to myself, if I had to pay to submit this application out of pocket, how much would I pay if each word in my application would cost me $5? I basically gave each word a $5 cost. And I think it also is because of my English, but I've seen English native people like writing really long answers that don't need to be super long anyways. So I think it applies to anyone. And I think I ended up saying like, hey, I don't know how much I was paying, but like, I think I was like, would I submit this for like 3,000 or 5,000? I don't remember the number. I was like, yes, I would make this bet. I think I would do it. Everybody can define what's the cost per word, but this is an exercise that really makes you think about what is really important to share. Because again, guys, I've like given feedback on application drafts, maybe like 500 personally at this point, past years. And I've given it to people that are like extremely successful, people who are becoming founders or that they've been to really good universities. It seems that people want to always share more than what's actually important. And I think removing all of the unnecessary adjectives from your application, removing all the jargon, just really like the right sentences that hit the spot, it's hard. It's not that simple. And so this is a personal exercise that I use myself. And I think, people can adapt it and use it however you want. But I think it's another thing to take into consideration, because in many cases, even when you're kind of trying to get an interview or like a call with a VC fund, your objective is not to get invested in or to get accepted. It's to get the first call. In order for you to get the first call, conciseness, like being really concise in how you sell yourself, is super, super important. So this is the case of acceleration programs. But in the case of, for example, when you're trying to talk to a VC and you send them a blurb, like a super short blurb, VCs expect like a 1 paragraph, maybe 2 sentences blurb. And if you're sending them a deck, they probably expecting a less than 10-page deck where each page doesn't have more than 20 words. Like they just want to really get to what you're building quickly. And if they're like, oh, this is interesting, they're going to be like, oh, let me give this person an interview. Let me talk to this guy or girl. In our case, let's talk to this founder so we can interview them and get more information. Because at the end of the day, we obviously have things to learn, but because we read so many applications, when we see a new company that is applying to our program, we can really quickly get what founders are building, if the application is well written, to be interested to talk to them. We're like, let's not lose time. This is good. Let's talk to them. I think, that's something to take into consideration. One of the other things to think about when you're taking this process as a sales process is, if you put yourself in the shoes of the reviewer, most people don't know this, but to me it's kind of obvious that the person who reads the application is going to read it in the same order in which you wrote it, in the same order in which the questions were asked. So obviously there's a hierarchical importance So the first question that we ask in Alliance, and in many cases, is, what are you building? Or I think in our case, it's like a 50 character. So taking time to work on this 50 character description, like quote unquote elevator pitch, it's really important. And avoiding like acronyms and just opting for straightforward language as much as possible, even in the crypto space where like we have so many kind of weird words. And then go into asking like, what's the problem? What's the solution? And I just wanted to say that you can be strategic about this, right? Like if you know that they're reading it in that order, maybe spend more time on those questions. But I don't want to be misleading. And I also want to make sure that you guys write every question with the same amount of care, because let's say when we're deciding between two companies, sometimes we could look at some questions and like discard one company because of the way they wrote some question in a careless way, or they just wrote some BS, and we're like, okay, now let's talk to this other company instead. Focus on the first ones, but also give the same amount of care to the other ones.
This is all great, by the way. As someone who struggles to stay concise, this is the good reminder to try and dig deep to be able to do that.
It's interesting because and by the way, like ChatGPT obviously has been helping us founders in the past, but we're going to get to the point where we're not going to be able to tell, I think so, sooner than later, especially if founders just take the first version of what GPT gives them or any other LLM. You can just tell. Back in the day, at least for me, when I had to like think of all these little hacks, I think, hopefully has been helpful for founders nowadays, and even for founders who are like, I think, one of the things I also wanted to mention, guys, is, and this is good that we're talking to you here on this with this program, which is almost like, as you mentioned, like you guys are like doing this all bootstrapped, which is great because at least for Alliance, there's a few other programs out there that work with founders in the stage that you guys are currently at. But for us, I think I've personally seen our admissions team focus more on teams that are a little bit further along, right? Like they may be already product launched, even if it's just the first version. They have kind of a little bit more traction. There's a few exceptions where we have founders that are really, really exceptional, and we just take them in with nothing, right? Like they don't have product, they maybe don't even have an idea, or like they're building at the end, they're like, it's okay, like we're going to help you. Because actually what happens a lot of the times is that our mentor, there's actually a few cases where some companies have pivoted in Alliance and built something that one of our mentors told them to build. And it has become one of the most successful companies in the cohort, or the most successful company. This is actually happening right now. Most successful company in our cohort right now just went from 0 revenue to 70 million ARR, $70 million in a few weeks. And it was a product that was advised by one of the mentors to build.
Do you guys need a janitor? I'm happy to act as a janitor. I'll just come through, sweep the floors. Just give me access to the Discord, man. I just want to learn. Come on now. So we do have about 15 minutes left. And what we try to do is maybe do some rapid fire questions. So I can ping you with questions that folks have asked. And then we're going to put it to practice. Like try and be as brief and to the point as possible, I suppose. Let's start with the first one. So we had from Building Dwarf, is Alliance DAO vertical focused? Is it more gaming? Is it Web3 projects in general? I guess what verticals is Alliance focused on?
Used to be DeFi when we started, called Alliance, and we invest in general across the board, anything that is crypto, even though we don't like the term Web 2.5.
And then this next one's from Colin. I think Colin had a drop, but he asked, is Alliance interested in Web3 esports growth? If yes, is only for Web3 gaming. I don't know if that's necessarily a fit for what you guys do, but I'll leave it to you to correct me if I'm wrong. So he runs events, I believe, out of Africa, esports Web3 events.
I mean, yeah, if it's something that is, I guess, like a company that he's looking to scale with a clear way to make money and it's scalable, like to become like a large company, for sure. But if it's something that is more, let's say, a lifestyle business where he's planning to build a few more of these competitions for esports, it's not something that's going to generate like hundreds of millions. Like if it's not VC backable, probably not. But anything that is VC backable, which means that it does scale, for sure. So if it's building, for example, platform where other people can actually host their esports events, and it's something more along those lines, maybe there's a fit there.
Great. And then I guess, so in my mind, when I hear VC backable, that's a company that could potentially scale to like $1 billion or so. Is that kind of the benchmark Alliance uses internally as well?
Not always $1 billion. I would say we invest $350,000, generally in average like a $5 million valuation. So it would be wrong to say like, anything others is successful. I think anything that if a company we invested in at 5 million ends up selling at 100, that's a 20x. That's insanely successful. Anything that can scale up to like $100 million valuation and above, I think should be VC backable for sure.
One of my co-founders here, Tom, says, how are you finding Portugal so far? If you don't mind sharing, what part of Portugal are you in?
It's I just moved here, so in the process of kind of immigrant situation where you have to like get to know the country. Luckily, Spanish is my first language, so it's easier to learn Portuguese, but making friends and all of those things. But Portugal is a really beautiful country. The weather is really good. Food is good. Sort of like I would say like a crypto capital of Europe, maybe. There's a bunch of crypto things happening, so that's also nice. And a bunch of like really rich crypto people have huge houses here as well. But also tax-wise, it's really nice. No legal advice here or financial advice. If you guys have a lot of your assets on crypto, I think looking at Singapore, Dubai, Portugal is a smart move.
Okay, so I'm going to sprinkle in one of my questions here. And this is going to be a hard one to answer quickly, but we're going to try. You mentioned a lot of your time is dedicated to helping founders just stay focused, not getting distracted by the glittery new thing. Can you hit us like real quick with like 2 tips on how you do that or how you advise teams to think through being focused?
So yeah, I mean, the first thing is actually quite simple. So founders set a specific goal at the beginning of the program. Let's say it's user acquisition. We need to acquire, in the case of, for you guys, like a good example for gaming, it's more like B2C. Let's acquire 1,000 players, or let's acquire 100 players that are retained at a daily basis, a D30. So if that's the objective, then what we try to do is keep founders accountable week over week. Founders have to come in to a kind of like a check-in meeting, share some of the progress that they've had during the week, what are going to focus on next week to unblock themselves, how can we help them unblock themselves. And we actually have Telegram. Not only we have the Alliance community platform, which I mentioned at the beginning, for founders to leverage other founders and stuff like that. But we have a Telegram group with each team, with the mentors, and honestly, like, it's active every single day. Like, really, really hard for me specifically to keep up, because mentors are talking all the time to the founders, sharing new things, sharing new industry information, maybe sharing like new competitive products that just came around, just kind of directing founders on, what to build and when to build, and how to think about some things that are happening in the space. Like, those are a couple of ways that we help founders, which is the weekly check-ins, and then just having a synchronous, like, constant communication on Telegram. And honestly, it's really more the responsibility of the founder to leverage us than vice versa.
Yeah.
Meaning that the founders that bother us the most are the ones that get the better return of investment, I would say. The ones that are always like asking us questions on Telegram, the ones that are constantly booking mentorship with us. By the way, founders can book mentorship with us through the community platform. They have 11 mentors, and our calendars are open for all the founders in the community. So yeah, these type of founders are the ones who get the best ROI.
Wow, love it. Last couple questions here. I do have a hard stop at 11, so I apologize, folks, if I have to run out here. But Tom said, happy to meet up. He will pay for coffee. Unfamiliar Dude said, how long is the cohort? And then can you confirm, is it remote or just NYC based?
It's 12 weeks. 4 weeks is kind of forced to be in NYC for the founders at least. And then the remaining 8 weeks, founders can decide to either go back home or stay working out of New York, depending on what they want to do. But the offices are open for all the founders.
Oh, easy. Okay. Next one's from Building Dwarf. He has 2 questions because he's a tricky bastard. He says, your opinion, when would you say would be the last call for investments during the cycle, considering that the market is heating up and VCs may be reluctant to enter a project if it's too late into the bull run?
It's funny because we actually, investing in the bull run, most of the leverage is actually on the founders. It's actually, for VCs, it's kind of like annoying because there is a lot of influx of capital. Typically, it's not smart capital because smart capital, it's here during the bull and the bear, right? It's always here. And the general advice for founders is just take the money and go and build. So it's really hard for founders to optimize if they want to have like a big brand name in their cap table or not. In general, it's just good to get the money. And so for, VCs that have been in the space for a long time and everybody's interested in rounds just get overpriced, and obviously overpriced rounds are bad for everyone, not just the VCs because they get a less return, but also for the founders who then have to essentially meet the demands of the round that they raised. They have barely a product and they're raising at a $50 million valuation, then they figure out how are you going to raise a Series A. So the answer to your question is, the only thing that changes in the bull market for us is that we have to make decisions quicker. And a lot of the times outside of our current processes, it's like, there's this, founders that are raising really fast and let's just wire the money as quickly as possible because we know these are good founders. And that's the only thing that changes. Apart from that, like it doesn't matter if it's like at the end of the bull, at the beginning of the end of the bear, it's pretty much the same. And typically when we make these types of decisions, it's because the fund is investing directly in the company. Many times these are teams that are not going to go through the acceleration. A lot of the times, 95+% of the times, teams have to just go to the normal process, apply on our website, and then the admissions teams look at it, they get interviewed, they go through the normal process. Doesn't matter if it's the bull or the bear.
I love it. All right. So last question, also from Building Dwarf. Does Alliance focus on large teams with good track records to invest big, or with indies with promising MVPs in small investments? Yes, this is a oriented question towards Building Dwarf startup.
So the question is if we focus on indies or like larger gaming startups?
Correct. More proven teams, or are you also open to indie teams who have maybe built an interesting, compelling MVP?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Both, I would say. Just to give you an idea, in our current cohort, there's a company that is building a set of tools. I wouldn't call it a programming language. Maybe it could be called a programming language, but it's a way for indie gaming developers to build crypto games or general 2D games. Is actually for 2D games. And then I think the founder built a few modules for adding like crypto features if the developers want to make the game crypto or just keep it non-crypto. So this is an example of something that I would say falls more into the category of something that is a little bit indie because, this guy is just essentially enabling more developers to build indie games. And he's not really going for the, Unreal Engine, huge games that are going to onboard 1 billion people into crypto. But we still funded this guy because he's great. I think the answer to this question is we are more focused on the founders than the idea. I would say it's like a 70-30 ratio. 70%, maybe 80% founder, 20%, 30% idea.
Perfect. Simon, I appreciate you coming through, man. Again, I've been following Alliance for at least 3 years. Like Will Robinson, I jumped in to listen to his podcast he did with Miko a while back, and I'm a huge fan of what you guys are doing. So it's great to finally be able to see some of the folks and understand how you guys are helping Web3 kind of get pushed forward. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys. Hope this was helpful. Maybe we can do this again. There's a few things that I forgot to mention. stay in the loop with other tips. But yeah, also like I can drop my Telegram in the chat. So if anybody wants to like continue the conversation, I can share more information.
Yeah, feel free to drop that. And then actually we didn't hit it, but the Alliance DAO cohort applications close May, was it 25th?
May 29th. Yeah, so we have a couple of months. Which is actually going back to my tips. Is like, this is what I would recommend. The minimum time for founders to start preparing. They want to like prepare really well.
Awesome. And then I guess, does your team conduct interviews between now and then? Or do you guys start interviews in May or June?
It's an ongoing basis. So actually, from the moment you submit an application until the moment that you get an interview, it can be as little as like 24 hours or maybe 48 hours. There are some cases where we put teams in a stage called in consideration, quote unquote, in consideration. And then the team gets an interview later down the road. But my general advice for founders who just want to keep on going is, if Alliance or any other accelerator hasn't invited you for an interview, let me just speak about Alliance. If they haven't invited you for an interview like 10 days after you submitted or 7 days after you submitted, it's probably not good news. And then we send a massive email rejection to all the founders that we rejected on a specific date, but we don't reject on an ongoing basis. We interview on an ongoing basis. So if we like the application, you will be invited for an interview very quickly, maybe 2 days, and then that's with one partner. If you pass that interview, you will be invited for a second interview where you can book your own time on Calendly, and that's with 2 partners. But if you don't pass, if you don't move on in the first interview, you'll also be notified right away, immediately, and with specific feedback on why we rejected you. While if you don't make it to the interview, we just send a general rejection, right? Because we get thousands of applications. And so founders who don't make it to the interview just get general rejection. Founders who do make it to the interview and don't move on to the final stage get a specific feedback. And then have what I recommend founders is to essentially like build the relationship from that moment, right? With the mentor, with the admissions team, keep them in the loop, apply for the next cohort. And we've seen this work so many times. I don't have the specific data on this, but so many times where founders just kept on building the relationship with our mentors and our admissions team in a smart way, and then they applied again.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. Simon, Alliance DAO, get your applications in before May ends. Thank you again, Simon. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you, guys. Have an amazing day. Cheers.
Take it easy. Peace.